Welcome to your personal audio guide for this wonderful exhibit. Enter the item number followed by the pound key.
So it kind of picked me up, and once a wave's got you, you're going to go wherever. You don't really have a lot to say about it.
That is longtime Kodiak fisherman Tom Thiessen. In the 1970s, Thiessen and another crew member were washed overboard while crabbing on the fishing vessel Epic. This is when crab was king, an oral history of the Kodiak king crab fishery. It was a February evening. The night prior, they had anchored off Old Harbor to beat ice off the boat. It was already dark, and they had planned to pick the last 12 pots before calling it a day. A rogue wave swept over the port side of the boat and washed Thiessen and his crewmate off the deck and into the near-freezing waters. In a weird twist of fate, Thiessen landed in one of the absolute worst places possible, right inside the coil of line that attached to a crab pot that was rapidly hauling him down below the surface.
And when I landed in the water, the pot had gotten washed off the rack, and I landed in the coil that I had put on top. I kind of got tangled up in it, just the way the wave washed me, and I was in the center of the coil, and so it entangled my legs and took me down. So I realized I was in kind of an awkward situation, so I started to flop like a fish, and the line came off me a loop at a time and then spun me on the last one. By this time I'm probably about 20 feet below the water surface, and I could see the boat passing above me as I started to ascend upward. And when I got up there, it was I could hardly see the boat. They had taken off.
But the boat wasn't taking off. It came back around to pick up the two in the water. The panicky greenhorn was easy to find. Thiessen, however, struggled to stay alive and afloat for maybe 20 minutes while the remaining crew members on the Epic searched for him.
I was having trouble staying afloat, and here come the kid. He was swimming towards me and really pretty excited, and I knew I couldn't help him, so I pointed to some buoys I saw, and he went over towards those, and he seemed so excited I just didn't want to go near him. I knew I was going to have all I could do to stay afloat, and I felt he might just drown me. Anyhow, retrospectively, they found him right away and got him aboard, and then they had trouble finding me, but eventually they did, and they were having trouble getting me aboard. I was pretty waterlogged. So I pointed to a life ring which they gave me, and then we hooked the crane through it, and I was brought aboard that way.
Kodiak fisherman Tom Thiessen.
Enter another item number followed by the pound sign, or you may hang up.
We put in 980,000 pounds of king crab that year. Just the one boat. Yeah, the Ocean Harvester. We never slept. It was quite an ordeal. But king crab was plentiful. We'd have 200, 300 keepers a pot. It was just, it was amazing. The man was a very good fisherman.
That is Peggy Smith. She started out like many as a cannery worker. In Smith's case, she was working at the Roxanne Cannery when she decided she could do better. She could fish crab instead of clean crab.
So I'd be in there on a pick belt picking shells out of king crab, watching the boats come in, boats go out, and I decided I could do that. So I asked around for a job, and most of the reaction was, "Oh no, girls don't fish." So I finally met this man named Mike Knox through a couple of friends of mine, and I asked him if I could go fishing with him, and he said, "Sure." And so we went out and went king crab fishing and filled up the boat, and we finished out the season. And then the next year, I was bartending at the Old Harvester bar, and I had this gentleman come in and say, "I hear that you cook on boats." And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, we need somebody for tanner season. This was in July, when tanners was still going in July. And they were making their last trip on the ocean harvester. And so I went out with them, and we finished tanner, and then they hired me for king crab.
There's an old superstition in fishing that warns about having women on board the vessel. Smith, who was one of the first women fishing crab in the early days, said she didn't have a problem.
No, they didn't. No, I think I worked too hard. Plus, we had a good time. But no, never that. Now, out in Dutch Harbor, when my first time out there on the ocean harvester, we got out there and there was a 7-week strike. And so that was the first time I realized how many Norwegians there are out in Dutch Harbor. Didn't even know how to speak English, most of them. And they came from the old country. And there was times when if we were tied up outside their boat, they hated me just even crossing their boat because I was a woman. But they could eat my dinner. They could come on my boat and eat all they wanted to, but I could not cross their boat. And I had no idea it was like that, but it was a lot of superstitions.
Peggy Smith, who fished in Kodiak during the 70s and 80s.
Enter another item number